The bank called it to 17 on a Thursday afternoon while I was standing between two shelves of aircraft tools holding a torque wrench I no longer needed. The branch manager lowered her voice and said my husband was sitting in her office with a woman who looked exactly like me, trying to liquidate $620,000 from my bond portfolio. My first thought was that there had been a mistake, because my husband was supposed to be in Phoenix for his brother's heart surgery. But my career in aviation safety had taught me that disasters rarely begin with a single sudden explosion. They start with small things people choose to ignore, like a loose bolt or a subtle warning light. Marriage can break apart in the exact same way. The branch manager told me to use the rear delivery entrance and keep my phone tucked away. Her name was Celeste, and she had managed my accounts for over a decade. As I drove north toward Tacoma, she stayed on the line to explain that the woman sitting next to my husband was wearing my favorite teal coat, my mother's pearl earrings, and carrying medical documents stating that I had severe cognitive impairment. The money was being transferred into an account connected to my son's private charter business, Skyward Lux. That single detail shattered any hope that this was a simple misunderstanding. Panic makes people careless, so I forced my hands to remain steady on the steering wheel while my mind mapped out the crash before me. Celeste unlocked the steel delivery door the moment I pulled into the alley behind the bank. She led me through a quiet service corridor into a darkened observation room behind the executive offices, where a one-way mirror gave me a clear view of the desk. My husband sat in a leather chair looking relaxed, polished, and perfectly healthy, completely unbothered by the massive lie he was telling. Beside him sat a stranger wearing my life, complete with my haircut, my clothes, and even a painted birthmark near her lip. She held her hands folded in her lap with her left thumb resting over her right, copying my exact body language. Someone had studied my habits patiently, transforming intimacy into an instruction manual for my replacement. Through the glass, I watched my husband place his hand gently against the woman's back and offer her a tender smile I had not seen in years. The stolen money was a massive blow, but that sudden display of stolen affection hurt significantly more. Celeste pointed toward a desktop monitor displaying my signatures on 3 withdrawal forms. The handwriting was convincing, but the stranger ended the final letter with a downward flourish, whereas I always lifted my pen. Russell's phone lit up on the desk with a text message from my son, telling him that their mechanic was getting nervous and that they needed to finish the transaction today. I knew right then that I was not just looking at a bank robbery, but a coordinated family betrayal. Celeste offered to call the police immediately, but I held up my hand to stop her. If officers rushed in now, my husband would claim he had been tricked by an imposter, my son would deny everything, and the nervous mechanic would vanish into thin air along with the truth. I asked Celeste to process a simulated transaction that would appear approved on their screen, while locking the funds safely inside the bank's internal network. 10 minutes later, a confirmation notice flashed on the desk monitor and my husband let out a long sigh. Of relief, he leaned over and kissed the imposter on her cheek before walking her toward the lobby, entirely convinced that they had just erased my future without firing a single shot. Instead of hiding, I hired a private investigator who tracked down the actress my husband had recruited, while I secretly gathered intercepted recordings proving my son had forged my signature on dangerous aircraft logs. I allowed them to execute the final land sale in front of an attorney, only to walk into the room alongside federal agents as the trap closed, screening their wiretaps, offshore transfer attempts, and bribed doctor reports for the entire room to see. I watched officers handcuff both my husband and son. 7 weeks later, I visited my husband in detention, where he sat convinced he still held millions in a hidden account. Turning the ledger toward him, I revealed that every dollar had been routed through a simulated trap, exposing all his previous financial crimes to prosecutors. As he stared in silent horror at the realization that his own arrogance had stripped him of everything, I walked away into the clear morning air, heartbroken by their betrayal, but whole, secure, and entirely free.